Yeah, so let's start our meeting. So we have 11 sharp. So hello everyone who has joined us already, and welcome to our webinar. So today is Agile Monday, and actually starting from today during April and May, every Monday at 11 in the morning Central Eastern Time, we will be talking about agility. And I'm glad to be joined and supported in this series by John Mark Williams, CEO at the Agile Business Consortium from the UK, and Maria Tsenusa, Innovation and Change Consultant and the Integrated Consultant Group from Romania. Thank you so much for joining me today. And my name is Elena Grinyuk, and I'm responsible for the Central Eastern Europe at the SME Banking Club, and I will be your host today. So before we go to the topic, let me mention some organizational moments. So our webinar is scheduled for half an hour. The format of today's webinar is a panel discussion. So you're welcome to type your questions from right now, from the very start. So please type them into the chat and we will read them and answer, I think, at once. And we are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive the link to this video. So let's go to the topic. We decided to start Agile Monday series from the topic of Agile people, as Agile people are one of the main elements required to make any organization truly Agile. So let's discuss where this pandemic situation that we are facing right now whether will it shift people's mindset towards the transformation in the long run. And so because of these days we were faced with the agility, but will we be able to save these changes and to go for the bigger ones when the things return to the normal? Actually, when we were publishing this today's topic in LinkedIn, we got a comment that generally people does not change. So that people are resistant to any changes, and even this situation will not change them a lot. And after all finishes and we get back to normal life, everything will be the same. So I'm passing this word to you, to our Agile expert, John and Maria. And John, would you please start and give us your thoughts on that?
Yes, I will. Indeed. Thank you very much, Elena. Good morning, everybody. Thoughts on the fact that people don't change? Hopefully, I mean, people do change because we are not the same as the people who lived 50 years ago, 100 years ago, let alone much longer than that. One thing I will say, though, is that normally it takes, unfortunately, a crisis to make many people change. And I wrote a blog recently, very recently, called Enforced Agility. And it was about the fact that this pandemic has actually forced both organizations and people to become agile. And I don't mean that in the sense of following an agile methodology. I just mean having to adapt and respond really rapidly, because otherwise we find that we can't do anything at all. So people do change. Normally, most people need to be forced into it, which is the point, of course, of agility being a strategic competency that people and organizations need to adopt. Maria, what do you think?
And I think no week is the same with the previous week. What we believe today, this Monday, might have different implications the next Monday. So I wonder when that comment was made, first of all. What I see with my clients and with the people that I'm talking with, at the beginning is that resistance level, and everybody is like sort of appalled and has all these feelings of being stuck at home. And because of that, you need to reassess your whole life, and you're basically having that resistance to a lot of the online tools. As time passes, people start to understand that, after all this Corona discussion that is still going on, we still do need to continue our lives. And I have seen, and that gives me hope quite a lot, I have seen people who before were quite let's say not so good with technology, or not so much embracing it. And I have seen people now embracing the technology because they need to do to have it for their own job, for their own business, or for they need to reach with somebody at personal level. So I think what we've seen in the past 2-3 weeks was like a transition to and an embracing of the online instruments, resisting less to that, and becoming more and more of a let's say something usual that we do. So people do change, and I agree. Unfortunately, it requires a bit of a shakedown for us to do it, but I think there's hope.
Yeah, I agree that there's hope, and in actual fact, I think the important thing, and this is the subject of today, the conversation about whether or not people are becoming agile. The important thing is to be prepared when the change arrives, so that it doesn't hit us hard. We are already flexible and adaptive and responsive enough. So, Elena, where would you like to go next?
Yes, this is actually good news that people are changing. Yes, the comments was made actually last week. Yeah, so yes, I think that now we are changing so fast that really next Monday we will be a bit another persons. Okay, so maybe let's go to some fundamental moments, John, for how to make people agile in the organization.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Elena. I've got a very short presentation here, probably the shortest I've ever done in my life, which is there's a title slide and there are 2 other slides. The title slide that I hope people can see on their screens in front of them just explains what we want to chat about, are people becoming agile. The first thing that I wanted to throw up, and this is the first slide, is just, of course, people are the most important resource in any organization. And yet we need to be aware of the context, the environment in which we expect things from people. And the environment for agility, for business agility in particular, contains not just people, it's also about finance, about operations, about marketing. And an agile strategy needs to encompass all of those things. And we may talk about some of the other things in this series of webinars that we do. Certainly the first one, of course, is about agile people. And I think there are 3 things necessary in order to help people, to enable people to become agile. So the slide on the screen now, it talks about the 3 things which I think are necessary for people to feel comfortable and confident being agile, being adaptive and responsive. The first thing is that we need, with all of our teams, to make sure that they still understand the purpose of what we are doing. As Maria said earlier on, we need to keep getting on with life. And we can't just get on with life because that's what we do. We need to feel a purpose. We need to be motivated. We need to be challenged and supported. We need to give, in a way, we need to have a reason to keep going. So that purpose is very important in getting us to position our minds to respond to a crisis like the pandemic. Secondly, we need to give our teams and ourselves permission. We talk about empowerment, letting people have the opportunity to determine the way that they work, the outcome of the jobs that they do. Empowerment is a much deeper thing than that. Giving permission means allowing people to make mistakes, to create, and Maria, I know this is something you're very, very both aware of and interested in, and I'm sure you'll talk about this later, this concept of psychological safety. We need to give people permission to do whatever's necessary when they are required to be agile without feeling challenged or threatened by that. Allow them to experiment. And lastly, actually, we need to give them the power also. It's not much point in saying to our teams, off you go, everybody, you can go and do whatever you think is right now. Actually, we need to make sure that they are able to do that. We need to make sure that we as leadership figures are supporting them as well as challenging them. We need to make sure that they have the knowledge to be able to do the things which are right. I have a team which is 8 people, and they spend all of their time engaging with our community always to find out, to test the temperature, if I can use a healthcare analogy, to see how the community is feeling, what the community needs from us. That's part of having the power to be able to respond, to adapt, to to be agile. And then, of course, give them the tools and techniques that are associated with agile behaviors. So people with purpose are able to respond much more from their own volition, from their own commitment, rather than just complying. People with permission will do so without fear and will therefore be much more creative. And when they have the power, the knowledge, the tools, the techniques, they do so with confidence. So I think if we ask the question, which we do, are people becoming more agile? The answer is only if these three things are in place. So there are my thoughts, and Maria and Elena, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, so I really like this combination because I think everything around agile and agility revolves around these things that we are seeing here. The discussion about purpose becomes even more relevant these days when you're not actually able to run the teams via physical presence, and when you actually need to instill the people the sense of direction that they need to have in order to do their jobs and also in order to feel secure. Everybody's feeling a bit threatened this time because this is an unprecedented crisis, so we don't need to talk more about it. But having a sense of purpose also from the company at also a personal level, it gives you like a bigger picture. It gives you like, what will happen after this? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Why do I matter? Why the things that I do matter? And giving this sense of accomplishment it is very powerful to go through every crisis that you will have. Talking about powerful, I liked, as John mentioned, I like the idea of very much about the psychological safety and to allow people to make mistakes and to allow people to solve an issue, come with a solution that is actually not the solution that you would expect, and assist to that journey that they're having in a way that allows them to flourish and also brings some alternative scenarios. So that is, of course, a must-have. On the power side, I will have a bit more to say about that, because you can have all this combination, but what I've seen quite a lot of time in practice is companies are not really setting their teams in a proper corporate governance way, if you may. So there is everything around it. There is the intention to do it. There is the purpose. There is everything. But then you have people that you have teams that start their agile way without properly understanding how they should interact to each other. What is how the prioritization at higher level is done? What is the boundaries of everybody? How can we escalate in case we do not agree with each other? These things are extremely powerful and extremely important on the road to gaining agility and on the road also to gaining significance at the personal level. Because if you are giving me a purpose and I can do a lot of stuff, but then the organization is sort of judging me because I'm not in the proper political context or whatever that may be, at the end of the day, the individual will just be extremely demotivated and will say, "I'm not buying this anymore." So indeed, the mix needs to be there, because with every missing ingredient, you will have something that will demotivate people, and the idea of self-organizing teams will not be there.
Yeah, absolutely right. And two things I came out of what you said really powerfully for me. The first one is there's a lovely phrase from fragile to agile, and which I've seen around a number of times on LinkedIn in particular. And I like that because it describes for me the fact that those things that you talked about before, the idea of a psychologically safe space within our organizations, those organizations which are not safe psychologically are very fragile because they are subject to breaking very quickly. And we see that in the response of some of the organizations to the current situation. So moving from an organization which is rigid and fragile to an organization which can be agile is partly a function of providing psychologically safe places for people. The other thing is this idea of governance, because I know the question, are people becoming more agile? For a lot of people, the answer would be, well, yes, if we let them do what they want. And of course, agility is not about people just doing what they want. There is a governance element to agility because there needs to be a purpose, and for a purpose to be achieved, a number of people need to follow the same direction. So there is in fact, there is an organization in Canada called Disciplined Agile. And when I first came across that, I thought, I like that phrase, because many people think of agility as being a sort of chaos, which by accident produces an outcome. In actual fact, agility requires some very serious discipline, focus on purpose, correct answerable governance, and that commonality of purpose that organizations need to have to achieve a swift and capable response to a situation, for example, like the one we're in now. So certainly we need to enable people to go from feeling fragile to be able to be agile, and we also need to make sure that there is a discipline applied there at the governance level.
Yes, we actually have one question which I would like to read you at once, and for you to comment. The question is, being focused most on culture, how can we best build an agile culture after diagnosis and idea generation and so on? So how do we enable agile culture transformation? And probably I will go back to this slide where we see an agile culture as a part of the agile transformation. John, would you start?
Very happily, yes, indeed. And in fact, these are some of the elements of an agile culture. In a way, they're some of the results of an agile culture. If we are agile in people, finance, marketing, and operations, our strategy will be agile, and we will have embodied an agile culture. In actual fact, we have a framework at the consortium, which is the framework for business agility, and that has 5 elements: people, culture, leadership, strategy, and governance. And for me, the most important of those is actually leadership, because whilst we can behave in a particular way, we can set an organization up so that it allows our people to be agile and that our finance is agile, etc. If the leadership is not agile in its mindset and behaviors, they will not be able to either create or maintain an agile culture. So we have a piece that the consortium produced called the 9 Principles of Agile Leadership. I won't go through all of them now. However, they're in 3 areas, and these are very important: communication, commitment, and collaboration. And I think if we, to create an agile culture, we communicate constantly with the people in our organizations, and that's about transparency and honesty as well as regular communication. We enable commitment. We help them create that purpose or feel that purpose. We give them reasons why the organization should exist and why what it does is valuable. And then we not just enable collaboration, actually cause collaboration, encourage people to collaborate, because actually teams create much more effective outcomes than individuals. So I think an agile culture is a function of communication, commitment, and collaboration. And I think without those exemplified and embodied in the leadership, that culture can't arise. Maria, I'm sure you'll have a view on that.
Yes, sure. I was actually almost like taking the words from what you said from the manifestos and the everything from Scrum and Kanban and what are the values of those. It was like a perfect sense, the courage, the commitment, the clarity, visualization. It's like everything was there. And I liked your approach about from the lead. It always starts from the leadership. We have to not only talk the talk, but also do the walk. Or how was it? If you have leaders that are not applying what they are preaching, that will be a certain disconnect. And there is one particular value that I draw from the Scrum, which I at the beginning it made me think a bit, but then I realized the power within it. It was the courage thing. Because and that can go very deep, because it requires courage to present something that is more like a minimal viable product. It requires courage to accept the feedback and openly look on how you can improve yourself, and it requires tremendous impact on the culture, so that people will just openly show their half-done work and accept whatever it is in the seek to be improved, not in the idea of seeking validation or seeking to be promoted internally. So indeed, these values resonate quite a lot with what we need to see in the culture. But I would add something else beside this culture, with, of course, without which, of course, you cannot have anything. I have some idea of that an article popped into my head from Harvard Business Review. It was written I think 2-3 years ago, and it was dwelling on how you actually start to be agile as an organization. And of course, working on the culture is you cannot do without. And but you can also have an agile culture without actually working in an agile way of working. So that's agility and agile discussion all over again. What I will want to say actually is that I come back to the idea of purpose. So having the vision that is shared by everybody in the company, that is understood, will bring us actually clarity in terms of how we can contribute as teams, how we can, why am I important? Why is it important what I'm doing? And to give a sense of self-fulfillment. And when you start with building an agile organization, these things need to be extremely transparent and clear for everybody, top to bottom. And even if you don't have all the business lines actually arranged in the idea of working agile, you need to understand as an organization what will make you or break you in 3 or 5 years, why you will be still be here after Corona or after whatever crisis will come. How is it that you are different? How are you as a company and you as an employer going to contribute in order to reach that thing? And I always like to switch between personal and professional. It is the same for us, exactly. It is the way to enable ourselves and to go further in this wonderful time, let's say, is actually to understand about ourselves, what motivates us, what drives us, what is a value that we offer, because that will keep us going. So
absolutely right. I like that. And one of the things that the last thing that you said reminded me, Jeff Bezos, who of course founded and has built Amazon, he said quite early on, I think, focus on the things that don't change. He said consumers will always want lower prices and faster deliveries. So that was one of the things that Amazon has focused on with a laser-like focus. So one of the things that we as organizations can do to be agile, and one of the things that we as people can do to be agile, is to say, what is it that people will want from me that will not change? So what is it in your industry? What are the fundamental elements of your industry that will always be there? The things that the consumers, whether B2B or B2C, will always look for. And it might be lower prices or faster delivery like Amazon. It might be something entirely different. For us as individuals, we're talking about people becoming agile. What are the things that employers or clients or peers, stakeholders will always want from us. They will always want, especially if we're at leadership level, they will always want us to be capable of strategic thinking. They will always want critical thinking. They will always want, the point that you made, Maria, courage. And courage is not, often people think that courage means not being afraid. Actually, courage means doing things when we are afraid. When actually, as you said, when the minimum viable product may or may not go well, the courageous thing to do is, the agile thing to do, is to experiment and see if it does go well, and then adjust it if it doesn't. This is the fundamental thing about people becoming agile, is not, do we think agile? Do we talk about agility? And your point, Maria, do we behave in an agile way? Because unless we do that, agility is just a concept rather than a state of being. And we need to move it into a state of being in order to cope with the situations like the one we have now.
Yes. I would like to encourage our attendees to ask questions. We have 5 minutes. So please be brave to ask your questions if you have some. And maybe my question, let me get back again to this previous slide. And can we maybe talk a bit now about the agile leadership? I mean, is it changing right now, or maybe some tools are changing when we all are working remotely? So can you give some examples on maybe some practical examples or some idea or so how actually these tools, how does it work now that the leaders should create this environment where agile teams can collaborate, learn from each other, etc., and how actually to make people engaged now?
Yeah, I can give you a couple of things, and I'm sure Maria has a lot more in the way of practical examples. The two things, I talked about communication and commitment and collaboration. If I give you one example in each of those, the first thing is, in terms of communication, organizations, one of our principles is that organizations improve, in other words, become more agile through effective feedback. So one of the things that we as organizations can immediately do is actually improve the quality of the feedback that we get, not just from the people in our organization, from the marketplace as well. Because actually we all, as individuals, we tend to fall into the trap of thinking that, especially if we are experienced, that we know what's going on. Of course, we have never been here before. This is a unique situation. Nobody knows what's going on. We need to find out. So effective feedback, generating effective feedback is really important. In terms of commitment, allow our people who think about purpose and permission and stuff like this, recognize that leadership can live everywhere in the organization. Devolve responsibility, delegate authority and responsibility, give people the chance to do what they know is right. And that's the most courageous thing that any leader can possibly do. And lastly, in terms of collaboration, actually recognize that teams deliver better and more and faster than individuals. So think about the team size, think about the competencies within the team, get the team to test itself against whether or not it can perform, but actually give people more devolved opportunity. Those are the practical things that I would do. Maria, I'm sure that you've got lots more.
Well, I want to continue from where you left off, because I think I got this idea in my head that actually with this crisis that is happening like right now, and the fact that we are sort of forced into a different modus operandi, we are actually, all of us are becoming more or less agile, because the way to manage a team and to lead the teams is actually exactly as you mentioned, that are principles of Agile, the transparency and the communication. And actually, right now, to manage a team in the sense that to understand everybody's strengths and weaknesses and allow them to do what they are at their best, and for them to organize themselves how they can do better with using the technology. I will add something extra that setting sort of like a weekly plan on what do we want to do for ourselves as a team, or even at personal level. What do we want to do in this week? And then afterwards talking about how it went, if it was as expected, or if it was even more than we believe we could do, would actually add to the sense of purpose that we have, because it will give us a meaning in this crazy world that we are like all stuck at home, and we would all know what we need to do at the end of the week. And to this, like the final comment would be measurement, understanding where are you getting better and where you're not, and use that for to further improve is actually the continuous learning basis of Agile. So even if we want to call ourselves Agile or not as an organization or as an individual, having this sense of purpose and managing around from one week to another, from one sprint to another, if you want, is going to make us pass this period faster and increase our agility, if that would be a purpose.
Absolutely, and I like the way, because what you've illustrated there is the need for focus, the need for metrics so that we can measure ourselves, and also actually the need to understand that agility is not an event. It's not just something that we do and then we're agile now. That's great. It is a state of being. It's got processes in it, and actually the way that we manage ourselves will determine whether or not we continue to be agile. One of the things I wanted to mention here, and this is very, I'm sure, relevant to some of our audience. Not everybody is in a leadership position in an organization. We know that people need to have leadership and responsibility devolved to them. However, not everybody is in that position. And one of the challenges that quite often occurs is, how do we help our boss become more agile? How do we help manage upwards, if you like? And one of the core tenets of an agile team, an agile organization, an agile culture is trust. That we trust everybody else in the organization to have the right momentum, the motivation, the right purpose, and that trust everybody to not create a blame culture, trust everybody to be supportive as a team. And where we are in a hierarchical culture and we are not at the top of that hierarchical culture, we need to find ways to try and help our boss operate in an agile way. So thinking about how do I help my boss recognize that I have some good ideas? Thinking about that, one of the ways to do that is to give the ideas. Just simply provide the ideas. Ask, first of all, can I help? Because I remember once going to one of my, a new boss that I acquired, and I said, look, my job is to help you look good. And my boss said, well, I'm not sure I understand that. I said, well, actually, I need to do my job well enough so that you look good as a boss. So my job is to help you look good. How do I help you look good? What do you need from me? And okay, here are some of the ideas I've got for how we can deliver and make you look good. It sounds strange when one talks about it in that way, yet actually, if the whole organization thought like that, how do we work together to make us all look good? There is a big shift that can happen there in culture towards agility.
Yes, indeed. And I think, well, I find hope these days because there is a lot of more authenticity that I see before than what it was before. People are becoming more authentic and more honest with themselves. And what you're talking about is also about the leaders or managers or whatever it may be, understanding that they are not in that almighty powers that they have. They are just regular people. They might be overwhelmed as well, and they might not be prepared for what is happening. So being honest and admitting that towards ourselves and towards the team is actually, on one side, is not giving ourselves a rough time because we are not the best. And on the other side is actually setting ourselves for experimentation, for trying new things, some failure, some success, but it's actually setting our inner self in a better position to be equipped for whatever will happen in the future. So I really like your comment with authenticity. Yeah, authenticity and honesty. That will, I hope, will change.
Yeah, absolutely. Uncertainty is not something that's confined to people in organizations. Uncertainty, leadership figures are not immune to uncertainty at all. And actually saying, to one's team, I don't know what we should do now. And then saying, what do you think? Is an authentic way for a leader to work. And there's a lovely quote from Lao Tzu, a Chinese philosopher, who said, when I let go of what I am, I can become what I can be. So instead of saying, okay, I'm the boss, I have to know everything, I have to have the answers, I've spent half my career with people coming to me with questions and giving them the answers, let that go. Let it go, actually. We've never been here before. Nobody knows how to deal with this. Let's get the wisdom of crowds, the wisdom of the team and the network and the community, because that is what will give us the solution to the challenges we face as individuals and as organizations.
Yes, thank you, John Maria. I would actually like to read, we have one comment here from Marcin Olszewski. So I will read this, and if you both would like to add something, because we will be closing already our meeting. So if you would like to add something after this comment, so you're welcome to do so. So the comment was, I totally agree. Also, when we are talking about engagement, we have to remember about opportunity to learn new things. Learning and development. It's not easy when we are working remotely, but still important. So this was the comment, and yes, if you're welcome to give your comments for the closure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Lifelong learning for me is an absolute requirement. It's a requisite of human beings, and the only way to remain adaptive and responsive and capable of agility is to keep learning. Everything new that we learn enables us to be more agile in future.
Well, this is actually one of the core values of Agile, of being Agile. And it's actually one of the core values of people. Being curious and constantly updating yourself is actually making you a person that is better prepared for uncertainty at the end of the day. And yeah, these times are, it's not easy, as Marcin is saying, it's not easy to work remotely and to open yourself to this new stuff and being forced to do so. But actually, I can share something from personal experience. 1 month ago, I would have never been picturing myself doing, offering an online webinar or offering online courses, working with teams remote, and combine like 3-4 pieces of the applications, technology, and whatever that might be. And right now, it's been a process. I have adapted. I don't know if I was fast or not, but it is also a way of us growing a bit more confident in ourselves. Because if we can do it in these hard times, whatever piece of thing that we do, that is small or big, it doesn't really matter. No big projects for us. I'm just saying that if we can do it in these times, it's actually giving us confidence that, yeah, we'll manage. It will be okay.
That's a great confident note to end on. Very good.
Yes, of course, we'll manage, sure. So I actually would like to thank John and Maria for your contribution today. We will be closing this meeting. Thank you all attendees for your presence and for your attention, and see you all next Monday, 11 a.m. Thank you and
Thank you.
bye.